So I will now call to order the City County Council meeting for Monday, May 10th, 2021. And we will begin our meeting with a prayer and pledge of allegiance led by Councilor Barth.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce Pastor John Russell. He is the pastor at University United Methodist Church, which is located on Grandview in the Crooked Creek neighborhood in the northern part of District 7. I've really had the opportunity to get to know Pastor John as he's called in the last couple of years, and it was my honor recently to speak at an event he had that was working to alleviate the problem of homelessness in our city. He's an important leader, and it's my pleasure that he's with us here tonight. With that, Pastor Russell, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. John Wesley, the founder of the United Methodist Movement, was quoted saying, "Do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places that you can, in all the times that you can, to all the people that you can." Today, we must be made aware, of course, of all of our social issues that touch the lives of those persons in our country, our community, and on our family, and to bring light for those who cry for peace and justice in the city of Indianapolis. But all of us who are yet expected to lead, we not only want to address laws and policies, but also love to strengthen this city. So I ask you all to join me in prayer at this time. Merciful God, we have heard your calling to lead your people. Grant that we may find grace and strength in you to carry the mantle to which you have placed inside of us. We ask you continue to bless this council. We ask that you bless our mayor, but most of all, continue to develop a true communal relationship in our city, that we will grow to become a stronger brotherhood and sisterhood as we continue to do all the good that we can to touch all the lives that we can in this great city. Amen.
Amen. And with that, we'll switch to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilor Barth, and thank you, Pastor Russell. Madam Clerk, please conduct a voice roll call. Councilors, please signify by stating your name and answering present, following the clerk's reading of your name, so that we have a clear record of who's in attendance. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Adamson.
Councilor Adamson, present.
Councilor Ane.
Ane, present.
Councilor Bain.
Councilor Bain, present.
Councilor Barth.
Barth, present.
Councilor Boots.
Boots, present.
Councilor Brown.
Councilor Brown, present.
Councilor Carlino.
Councilor Carlino, present.
Councilor Dilk.
Councilor Dilk, present.
Councilor Ethan Evans. Councilor Jared Evans.
Councilor Jared Evans, present.
Councilor Graves.
Councilor Graves, present.
Councilor Gray. Councilor Hart.
Councilor Hart, present.
Councilor Jackson.
Jackson, present.
Councilor Jones.
Councilor Jones, present.
Councilor Larison.
Councilor Larison, present.
Councilor Lewis.
Councilor Lewis, present.
Councilor Mascari.
Councilor Mascari, present.
Councilor McCormick.
Councilor McCormick, present.
Councilor Mowry.
Councilor Mowry, present.
Councilor Oliver.
Councilor Oliver, present.
Councilor Osley.
Councilor Osley, present.
Councilor Potts.
Councilor Potts, present.
Councilor Ray.
Councilor Ray, present.
Councilor Robinson.
Councilor Robinson, present.
And Mr. President, if I may call Councilor Evans and Gray again. Councilor Ethan Evans. Councilor Gray. Mr. President, I have 23 by voice present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
We don't have any outside guests this evening, so the next item on our agenda is official communications. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, you are hereby notified that regular meetings of the City County Council, Police, Fire, and Solid Waste Collection Special Service District Councils will be held electronically and in the City County Building in the council chambers on Monday, May 10th, 2021 at 7:00 p.m. The purposes of such meetings being to conduct any and all business that may properly come before regular meetings of the councils. Sincerely, Bob Osley, President, City County Council. Ladies and gentlemen, pursuant to the laws of the state of Indiana, I cause to be published in the Court and Commercial Record and in the Indianapolis Star on Friday, April 23rd, 2021, a copy of a notice of public hearing on proposal numbers 132 and 134, 2021. Said hearing to be held on Monday, May 10th, 2021 at 7:00 p.m. in the Public Assembly Room of the City County Building. Respectfully, Sarita Hughes, Clerk of the City County Council. Ladies and gentlemen, I have approved with my signature and delivered this day to the Clerk of the City County Council, Sarita Hughes, the following ordinances: Fiscal Ordinance Number 7, General Ordinance Numbers 11 through 14, Special Resolution Numbers 19 through 22, Joseph H. Hogsett, Mayor. Mr. President, this concludes the official communications.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The next item on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Are there any motions regarding the adoption of the agenda this evening? Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to amend the agenda to advance proposal number 170, 2021, currently in the introduction of proposals, to the first item of business under special orders, final adoption for action this evening. This is a time-sensitive ratification of public health orders related to the COVID-19 pandemic due to recently passed state legislation.
Council Jackson seconds.
Thank you. Thank you for the motion and the second. Is there any discussion? Very good. Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please conduct a roll call.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Adamson? Councilor Adamson?
Counselor Adamson, aye.
Thank you. Councilor Arnay?
Is this just to bring the item to final vote tonight?
Yes.
Aye.
Councilor Bain?
Counselor Bain, aye.
Councilor Barth?
Barth, aye.
Councilor Boots?
Boots, aye.
Councilor Brown?
Brown, aye.
Councilor Carlino?
Counselor Carlino, aye.
Councilor Dilk?
Counselor Dilk, aye.
Councilor Ethan Evans? Councilor Jared Evans?
Counselor Jared Evans, aye.
Councilor Graves?
Counselor Graves, aye.
Councilor Gray? Councilor Hart?
Counselor Hart, aye.
Councilor Jackson?
Council Jackson, aye.
Councilor Jones?
Council Jones, aye.
Councilor Larison?
Counselor Larison, aye.
Councilor Lewis?
Lewis, aye.
Councilor Mascari?
Counselor Mascari, aye.
Councilor McCormick?
Council McCormick, aye.
Councilor Mowry?
Counselor Mallory, aye.
Councilor Oliver?
Counselor Oliver, aye.
Councilor Osley?
Councilor Osley, aye.
Councilor Potts?
Counselor Potts, aye.
Councilor Ray?
Counselor Ray, aye.
Counselor Robinson?
Counselor Robinson, aye.
Thank you. Counselor Gray? I don't think Counselor Gray is with us. Mr. President, I'm sorry, the vote is 24, including Counselor Ethan Evans.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Proposal number 170, 2021 will be placed first on the agenda under final adoption. If there are no further motions, may I have consent to adopt the agenda as amended?
Consent.
Consent.
Very good. Thank you, councilors. The next item on our agenda is approval of journals for April the 12th, 2021. Do I have consent?
Consent.
Thank you, councilors. We will now proceed to presentation of petitions, memorials, special resolutions, and council resolutions. This first item on our agenda is proposal number 168, which honors the victims and survivors of the mass shooting at the Indianapolis FedEx ground facility on April the 15th, 2021, and the first responders and medical personnel who acted quickly to save lives. I think I will turn this over now to councilors Bain and Evans, Jared Evans.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll begin by reading the first half of the resolution, a special resolution to honor the victims of the mass shooting on April 15th, 2021. Whereas the council affirms the right of every resident of Indianapolis and Marion County to live, work, worship, learn, play, and love whom they feel free from victims or from violence. And whereas the council strongly condemns all forms of hatred that lead to violence, whether random or based on racism, xenophobia, sexism, or any other forms of discrimination or bias. And whereas the council remembers in deep sorrow the tragic loss of 8 souls taken in the mass shooting perpetrated on April 15th, 2021 at the FedEx ground facility in Indianapolis, Indiana. And whereas the council likewise remembers the 7 individuals physically injured in the attack, along with many survivors, family members, friends, loved ones, and coworkers left to cope with the emotional trauma inflicted by that horrific assault. And whereas our community's brave first responders who responded to the scene of the shooting encountered scenes of violence that will be forever seared into their memories. And whereas members of the Indianapolis medical community fought to save the lives of those injured in the shooting by providing excellent emergency care. And whereas mental health providers, counselors, and faith leaders have tended to the invisible wounds of the shooting for survivors, families, and first responders, and will continue to do so for decades to come. And whereas the council solemnly remembers the devastating and disproportionate impact of this mass shooting on the city's Sikh community, whose members have walked through their darkest hour with courage, dignity, and compassion. And whereas this council is resolutely committed to preventing or preserving the rights of residents, no matter their skin color, to practice the faith of their choosing without fear of harassment or violence. And whereas the council honors the lives and contributions of those killed in the attack on April 15th, 2021. And whereas Samaria Blackwell dreamed of someday joining the ranks of the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department. At just 19, had already become a public servant through her work as a lifeguard for Indy Parks. And whereas Carly Smith, also 19, had just earned her first paycheck from FedEx the night she was killed. Carly cherished her 9 siblings and her beautiful mama, as she called her mother, and was the one who made everyone smile. And whereas Avon native Matt Alexander, 32 years old, Matt had recently marked 10 years at FedEx, but was most proud of having bought his own home 2 years ago in Avon. where he could be close to his parents and his sister. Whereas Amarjat Sikwan, 48, was known as the pillar of her household. She worked the night shift at FedEx to help support her 2 sons and her disabled husband, and spent her Sundays praying at her Sikh temple. And
whereas 50-year-old Jasvinder Kaur was eagerly anticipating her 2-year-old granddaughter's birthday celebration on April 17th. Instead, her family found themselves gathering that weekend to plan her funeral. And whereas Amarjit Kaur Jahal was a mother and grandmother who would give a stranger the food off her plate if they were hungry, and was called Aunt by many of her FedEx coworkers for the way she took special care of everyone. And whereas, after dedicating most of his life to the Sikh religion, 68-year-old Jaswinder Singh has worked at FedEx for less than a week and was so excited to be collecting his first paycheck in 3 decades that he was dressed and ready for work 3 hours before his shift began the night he was killed. And whereas, after retiring from a career as a mechanical engineer, 74-year-old United States Air Force veteran John Steve Weiser took job at FedEx and was planning a 50th anniversary trip this November with his wife, Mary. And whereas the council joins all residents of Indianapolis and our Sikh neighbors in particular in mourning each of these individuals and the joy they had yet to bring to their families, loved ones, friends, co-workers, and to our city. Be it now resolved by the City County Council of the City of Indianapolis and Marion County, Indiana. Section 1, the council recognizes the strength of the Indianapolis community in showing compassion to all those affected by this event and refusing to allow the tragedy to define our city. Section 2, the council likewise honors the resilience of the Indianapolis Sikh community and its determination to respond to violence with those forces of faith and love. Section 3, the council commends the first responders and medical personnel whose swift action prevented further violence and loss of life. Section 4, the council affirms its commitment in rooting out all forms of hatred in our community, including and particularly those based on race, religion, ethnicity, gender, and orientation. Section 5, the council commits to constructive and open discussions about addressing workplace violence and increasing equity, diversity, inclusivity, and social justice in the city of Indianapolis. Section 6, the mayor is invited to join in this resolution by affixing his signature thereof. Section 7, this resolution shall be in full force and effect upon adoption and compliance with IC 36-3-4-14. Mr. President, I so move.
Second.
Thank you, councilors, for the reading. And I know that this particular special resolution had countless co-sponsors, and I'd like to provide an opportunity for any of the councilors who wishes to speak to do so. Councilor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I'm just heartbroken and so sorry. Please extend my condolences for everyone's loss and my sincere appreciation to the first responders for taking care of everyone. One of the victims was a District 16 constituent. So tonight I would like to talk to her mom and her family if they're listening. Karen and her brothers and sisters, Carly, and all the vigils, so many of the vigils that we attended. Thank you so much for the city for providing those and the Sikh community for providing the vigils. Anytime I ran into anybody that knew Carly, they said she was like a big sister. She had numerous brothers and sisters, but everyone considered Carly their big sister. And I just want Karen and Carly's family to know that she has a family in our community and our city, and that forever that we will wrap our arms around her and Carly's brothers and sisters, and we will forever hold them up and love and support, and whatever they need, that we are here for them. This is a terrible tragedy, but they're not going to be forgotten. Their legacy will live on, and they have a new family in us, in our city, and our council, and whatever it is that we can do. But Karen, you have an amazing community with us. We love you. We love Carly's family, and we are here for you. And we will not let Carly be forgotten. She's our neighbor, she's our family, and we are here for you and we love you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Jones. Chairwoman Jackson.
Mr. President, to all the victims' families, those who were there, who have received trauma from this shooting, those all involved, my deepest condolences and my empathy to you. I know people are looking to lawmakers to say, what are you doing about this? And I believe this is everyone's problem. You can't predict when a person's gonna do something so tragic like this. But when the council supported a gun violence proposal a couple of years ago here on the city level, a councilor asked me, why do you want to call this a health crisis? When we learned from the alleged background of this young man that he had some mental health issues. That's why. We need to take more aggressive acts, I believe. We alone cannot do it together, but the leadership of this city, I'm proud that we have taken some steps. I think there's additional steps that we can take. I think the community and these families are looking to us. I think we look to our state and our federal level to see what can be done. And to our president, this is a call to action. It's nobody thinks to go to work and not go home, go to a grocery store and not leave or return to their family, a shopping center and not return to their children. So I think anything that we can continue to do for our colleagues, for these families, to comfort these families of assurance, to know to stay on the steadfast track, that we will promise to do whatever we can on our level of government, that they're calling in. I've been seeing on the media, they're asking for more work in this area to curb gun violence and not to take away the liberties and the constitutional rights of people to bear arms, but for those who shouldn't bear arms, is what we're saying. And there is a difference. And there's a fine line, but there's a difference, as in this case. So to those families, and again, my deepest condolences to you. You have some councils and some leaderships that are fighting to make a difference tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Are there any additional comments from councilors? All right, seeing none and hearing none. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, please signify by saying nay. Very good, the motion carries. Thank you very much, councilors. The next item on our agenda is proposal number 169, which recognizes local food pantries and community centers, which have worked tirelessly to get much needed food and resources to Indianapolis families throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Who will be speaking on this evening?
I will start, Mr. President. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
Special Resolution 169 is to really honor those champions, those superheroes that wear that invisible cape here in our city, in our county, that have effortlessly even risked their lives to make sure that there's food access for our less underserved, and even those who may not be underserved, but because of the pandemic was put in a situation where they lost their jobs or became underemployed, that needed that extra help through food access delivery and food distribution, that came in the form of our food pantries, our churches, and our community centers. And we want to honor and say thank you tonight. And we're going to go ahead and I'll pass the baton to our Majority Leader, Councilor Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. President. A special resolution that recognizes local food pantries, community centers, churches, and temples that have worked tirelessly to get much needed food and resources to Indianapolis families throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Whereas the Indiana Hunger Network has reported that the need for food assistance by Marion County residents had nearly doubled in response to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. With the local numbers, total numbers of meals provided by the area not-for-profit and federal nutrition programs rising from 11,850,916 in February of 2020 to 22,587,724 meals by June. And
whereas the Indiana Hunger Network similarly reported that the estimate numbers of meals required to meet the total need also doubled in response to COVID-19, growing from approximately 380,000 meals needed per month in February of 2020 to nearly 740,000 meals per month required in June of that same year. Whereas Gleaner's Food Bank in Indianapolis distributed nearly 8 million pounds of food in spring of 2020, more than twice the organization's usual amount.
Whereas researchers at the IUPUI Polis Centers reported in November 2020 that lack of food exacerbates all the other outcomes of poverty, including violence. And whereas, in response to this need, a wide variety of food pantries, community centers, churches, temples, businesses, public agencies, nonprofits, and grassroots organizations, and thousands of workers and volunteers, including members of the Indiana National Guard and the Salvation Army, have worked often at great personal risk to provide millions of meals to Indianapolis residents experiencing food insecurity during the COVID-19 pandemic. And
whereas between March 2020 and March 2021, the Midwest Food Bank distributed more than $57 million worth of food relief to Indiana food pantries with the support of more than 2,500 Hoosier volunteers and Guard members who collectively provided more than 50,000 hours of service for food relief efforts. And whereas in the same time period, 21,163 Gleaner's Food Bank volunteers distributed 103 million meals to Central Indiana families, a number that represents 237% of the pre-pandemic need. And
whereas between March 2020 and March 2021, CICOA provided over 500,000 meals to older adults needing food assistance in Central Indiana. And whereas volunteers at Second Helpings in Indianapolis logged more than 40,000 hours in that same period of time, rescuing donated food from Second Helping partners, including locally owned Side Street Catering, Sam's Restaurant Group, and Cunningham Restaurant Group. And you're muted, Boots.
Sorry about that. Whereas Second Helpings volunteers turned donated food into more than 2 million prepared meals and, including additional food pantry contributions, distributed the equivalent of more than 4 million meals to hungry families in Indianapolis, an 83% increase in food distribution since March 2020. And whereas staff and volunteers from Indianapolis Public Schools collaborated with Gleaner's Food Bank to provide thousands of family meal boxes at 22 school and community sites in the past year. And
whereas at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, Indy Parks shifted its 2020 programming almost overnight from recreation to hunger relief, leveraging 22 staff and 10 volunteers and partnerships with Keep Indianapolis Beautiful and 913 Sports to provide more than 200,000 children's meals, 43,000 family meals, nearly 30,000 sandwiches, and 5,300 dry goods boxes to help feed almost and 80,000 Indianapolis families since March of 2020. And
whereas these efforts represent just a fraction of the diligent work done by Indianapolis community centers and food pantries to address food insecurity among Marion County families.
Be it resolved by the City County Council of the City of Indianapolis and Marion County, Indiana, Section 1. The City County Council commends each of the individuals and organizations who joined the effort to feed Marion County families during the COVID-19 pandemic. Section 2, the council extends its gratitude to these individuals and organizations for their service and sacrifice. Section 3, the council encourages all those with the ability and means to serve or donate to our city's hunger relief efforts to continue to do so. Section 4, the mayor is invited to join in this resolution by affixing his signature here too. Section 5, this resolution shall be in full force and effect upon adoption and compliance with IC 36-3-4-14, the foregoing on this day, which is May 10th, 2021. Mr. President, I so move.
Second.
We have a second.
Second.
Thank you very much, councilors. The motion's been properly moved and seconded. Are there comments from councilors?
Yes, Mr. President, I have a couple people that's going to just briefly speak 30 seconds. We can't give away $57 million in food and so forth and not have a couple of these organizations on hand. I have a community representative from my district. Cafe is a Director Caldwell on the line. And while she's coming to the line, I want to commend also our own majority leader, Chairwoman Maggie Lewis. She's the CEO of the Finish Line Boys and Girls Club in my district as well. They made sure that meals were provided in the evening to young girls and boys in the district and in the Far East Side area. I commend you and the work that your leaders at that organization has done as well. And to all the community centers, to all the churches, to all the food distribution agencies and pantries and anyone. I met people that just gave food out of their home to people in need. Our council, our city council, we thank you. We love you for that. Is Shirley on the line? If not, we should have someone from a couple of food pantries. Can you go ahead and speak?
I see Ms. Weigman and I see Mr. Elliott. Ms. Weigman.
Thank you, Mr. President, and members of the City County Council. What made our city's response uniquely successful was that hunger relief organizations worked together to share strategies and resources all around our city. Churches and community centers helped us reach homebound seniors and isolated households struck by COVID. Our community addressed this crisis together, from the support of this council to the Lilly Endowment and CSER funders and thousands of individuals who contributed to these efforts. And we are also grateful for the leadership and guidance of Dr. Kane, who helped us to protect our staffs as essential workers during this crisis. Our challenge now is to continue to serve those who will need assistance after the pandemic has passed. At the same time, we celebrate the return of summer youth programs and the reunions of seniors at local community centers. And we will ensure that there is a nutritious meal waiting for them when they arrive. Thank you for this recognition. Thank you for standing by us and for your continued support as we move forward to ensure that everyone in our community has the food they need to thrive.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Elliott.
Yes.
Well, thank you on behalf of some very hardworking Gleaners employees. And I will not repeat what Jennifer said more eloquently than I would have said it anyway. But I think it's also appropriate that this council collaborated in reading this resolution, just as the Indie Hunger Network partners collaborate every single day. No organization, even one as large as Gleaners, could get this done alone. It has taken hundreds of traditional hunger relief partners, and at the peak, 71 nonprofits that pre-pandemic did not get involved in hunger relief, but stepped up to join us. So it's taken quite an army of help to get it done. We appreciate your resources, but I will tell you, our employees particularly take note of the leadership of Mayor Hogson and Dr. Kane, who have been several times to Gleaners, hands-on handing out food. I recall one afternoon where I looked out several times and saw Dr. Kane is still out there working the line. So she eventually went on to do her other duties, but you know, that is very, very motivating for our employees. And we are struggling now still, if I could ask you to indulge one other point, and that is we need more volunteers. Last month, we filled 61% of our volunteer slots. We still have a great deal of work to do in this multi-year economic recovery our neighbors are counting on us for. So to the extent you're willing, please join us to volunteer, but also please direct those that you think might be willing to help us or any of the other organizations. But for Gleaners, it's gleaners.org/volunteer. And again, thank you very much for the resources and time and encouraging support.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thank everyone on this call. Mr. President, one last thing. I want to toot the horn of my colleagues here tonight. I've seen so many of us out here tirelessly volunteering. I won't name too many, I won't say names, but I know like Councilor Graves, I've seen him out personally, myself and others, Councilor Duke Oliver and Madam Maggie Lewis and yourself, you've been out, Mr. President, and many others on here have been out at Gleaners and other places. Carlino, McCormick, I've seen you all out here volunteering in different places and capacities. So thank you. I'll toot your horn. I'll toot it for you, for all our counselors. Thank you so much for what you do, Indie Hunger Network, to Gleaners, and to all of the ones in our county, in our city, to the community centers and to the churches who don't get mentioned. I wish we could put a log together, a directory of all the churches done it, because I think there's not a church probably in this city who hasn't donated in some way and given back. So thank you all again. Mr. President, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you. I see a couple of hands, so we'll start with Councilor Graves and then go to Councilor McCormick. Councilor Graves.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. As has been mentioned, there's so many members of our community that stepped up during this time in need, a very special time in our lives. But I want to make sure to just give a special shout to some of those organizations and individuals that particularly help the citizens of District 13, primarily MLT Mentoring and Outreach, a great organization that serves the east side of Indianapolis, along with Michael Soul Kitchen, very helpful in their efforts. And finally, New Direction Church. I want to give special shout out. There were so many that I'm sure that there are so many that I should mention, but Mr. President, I just want to make sure that some of those role players in our community were mentioned individually. Thank you so much.
Councilor McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Chairwoman Jackson, for spearheading this special resolution. So we've thanked everyone, and I know there are hundreds of thousands in our community that were involved in supporting all of our residents. I want to do a shout out to our youth that were involved. I know that we had students, college students, high school students, K through 12. There were Boy Scout, Girl Scout troops that also had fundraisers and events and did donations and did charity work through this as well. And so I want to give a little shout out to them for the work that they did too. So preparing our next generation to help those that are in need. And if it's welcome, I'd love to be a co-sponsor. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you.
Excellent. Councilor Ethan Evans.
Thank you, President Osley. I also wanted to just give a quick shout out to in my district, the Lawrence Township schools. They did, when everything shut down in March, we had the school lunch workers and the staff did an excellent job helping when the kids were sent home, helping prepare lunches for kids who didn't have access on a regular day. So just having that provided on a daily basis still was an amazing asset and amazing job for those workers at Lawrence Township schools. So I just want to give a shout out to them. Also, No Questions Asked Food Pantry on the Near East Side has done great work in last year, just providing lots of food and getting donations and giving them out in different places across the city. So those two shout outs I wanted to give, and I'm really happy to be a co-sponsor of this. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilors. Councilor Boots.
Thank you, Mr. President. On a similar note, I would like to just do a quick shout out to Dr. Nikki Woodson, Superintendent of Washington Township Schools, who garnered all the forces of Washington Township to make sure that K-12 kids in my district, the eastern part of Washington Township, got meals, many of which were the warmest and only meal of the day in some of the tough times. So I really was quite proud of the forces that our Washington Township and the part of Lawrence Township, the western part that I represent, was really empowering to see that our public schools stepped forward and helped as many people and families as they did. Thank you, Mr. President.
Again, thank you, Councilors. So the motion's been properly moved and seconded. If there are no additional comments, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Please signify by nay. All right, hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you all very, very much. The next item on our agenda is proposal number 145, referred to Municipal Corporations Committee. Chairman Gray.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Municipal Corporation Committee of the City County Council met on Wednesday, April 21st, 2021. We had before us proposal number 145 of 2021, which appoints Hope Tribble to the Indianapolis Marion County Public Library Board of Trustees. Ms. Tribble stated that she was raised in Indianapolis and is a product of Indianapolis Public Schools. She attended college in Washington, D.C. She stated that she is really excited about this opportunity and that she spent a lot of her childhood at the library browsing through the card catalogs. Councilor Evans stated that he looked forward to voting for Ms. Tribble and feels that she was be an asset to the board. Councilor Hart asked why she wanted to be on the board and if she had any conflicts of being on the board. Ms. Tribble stated that she spent most of her career as a public servant and has service at heart. She stated that she is excited about the vehicle that the library is for citizens, residents, learning, and assets, and she is excited to be a part of that. She stated that she is not aware of any conflicts. Councilor Gray stated that a library can transform a whole community and that he has hope that the library board will consider the Far East Side as a location of a new library. Chairman Gray stated that there were a 6-year plan that did some work at the Warren Library, and also they have some plan for the Lawrence area. They are getting ready to do a new plan, and he hopes they can get some new libraries on the east side. Councilor Mascarity moved, second by Councilor Evans, to send proposal 145 to the full council with a do pass recommendation. The motion carried by a vote of 7-0, and Mr. President, I so move.
Second.
Motion has been properly moved and seconded. Are there comments from councilors? All right, seeing none, we'll now proceed to roll call for a vote. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Adamson.
Councilor Adamson, aye.
Councilor Ane.
Councilor Ane, aye.
Councilor Bain.
Councilor Bain, aye.
Councilor Barth.
Barth, aye.
Councilor Booth.
Boots, aye.
Councilor Brown.
Councilor Brown, aye.
Councilor Carlino.
Counselor Carlino, aye.
Councilor Dilk.
Councilor Dilk, aye.
Councilor Ethan Evans.
Councilor Ethan Evans, aye.
Councilor Jared Evans.
Councilor Jared Evans, aye.
Councilor Graves.
Counselor Graves, aye.
Counselor Gray,
Councilor Gray, aye.
Counselor Hart,
Counselor Hart, aye.
Counselor Jackson, Counselor Jackson,
Counselor Jackson, aye.
thank you. Counselor Jones,
Counselor Jones, aye.
Counselor Larison,
Counselor Larison, aye.
Counselor Lewis,
Counselor Lewis, aye.
Counselor Mascari,
Counselor Mascari, aye.
Counselor McCormick,
Counselor McCormick, aye.
Counselor Mowry,
Counselor Mowry, aye.
you, Counselor Oliver,
Counselor Oliver, aye. Counselor Oliver, aye. Counselor Oliver, aye. Counselor Oliver, aye.
I do apologize. Counselor Osley,
Counselor Osley, aye.
Counselor Potts,
Counselor Potts, aye.
Counselor Ray,
Counselor Ray, aye.
Counselor Robinson.
Counselor Robinson, aye.
Thank you, Mr. President. The vote is unanimous.
Very good. The next item on the agenda is introduction of proposals. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. Proposal number 147, introduced by Counselor Osley, referred to the Administration and Finance Committee, approves an additional appropriation of $3,621,300 in the 2021 non-city departmental budget American Rescue Plan Fund to fund response efforts addressing the COVID-19 pandemic, including programs to combat the secondary economic effects of the pandemic faced by residents, businesses, and nonprofits. Proposal numbers 148 through 149 refer to the Metropolitan and Economic Development Committee and were introduced by Councilor Osley. Proposal number 148 authorizes the Director of the Department of Metropolitan Development and the Controller to enter into payment in lieu of taxes pilot agreements with property owners who have received tax exemptions, under Indiana Code 6-1.1-10-16.
Go from there?
Mm-hmm.
Not quite.
Proposal number 149 amends Chapter 341 of the Code, added a new Article 3 regarding waterway activities in and on the downtown canal. Proposal number 150, introduced by Councilor Carlino, referred to the Administration and Finance Committee, approves an additional appropriation of $2,128,000 in the 2021 budget of the Department of Parks and Recreation, Parks General Fund to finance the final maturity payment of the existing 2014 note related to the capital improvements of the Eagle Creek Golf Course. Proposal numbers 151 and 152 refer to the Public Safety and Criminal Justice Committee and were introduced by Councilor Robinson. Proposal number 151 approves the mayor's appointment of Lauren N. Rodriguez as the Director of the Office of Public Health and Safety. Proposal number 152 approves an additional appropriation of $50,000 in the 2021 budget of the Marion County Coroner Federal Grants Fund for the purposes of additional grant awards for violent death reporting and sudden unexpected infant death investigations. Proposals number 153 through 155 referred to the Public Works Committee. Proposal number 153, introduced by Councilor Adamson, approves transfers and additional appropriations totaling $48,898,000 in the 2021 budget of the Department of Public Works, Transportation General, Stormwater General, City Cumulative, Parking Meter, and Solid Waste Collection General Funds to finance design, construction, and inspection of capital infrastructure projects, along with an unanticipated contractual costs. Proposal number 154, introduced by Councilor Osley, authorizes intersection controls at 11th Street and Medford and Sharon Avenues in District 11. Proposal number 155, introduced by Councilors Barth and Potts, authorizes intersection controls at 54th Street and Kenwood Avenue in Districts 2 and 7. Proposal number 170, introduced by Councilor Osley, referred to the Committee of the Whole, ratifies public health orders related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Proposal number 171, introduced by Councilor Lewis, refers to the Metropolitan and Economic Development Committee, appoints Brandon Fishburne to the Woodruff Place Economic Improvement Board. Proposal numbers 172 and 173 refer to the Administration and Finance Committee. Proposal number 172, introduced by Councilor Mascari, reappoints Barbara Howard to the Alcoholic Beverage Board of Marion County. Proposal number 173, introduced by Councilor Mowry, appoints Joshua Bain to the City County Audit Committee. Proposal number 174, introduced by Councilor Mowry, referred to the Public Safety and Criminal Justice Committee, appoints Gordon Smith to the Juvenile Detention Center Advisory Board. Mr. President, this concludes the introductions.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The next item on our agenda is special orders, priority business. Proposal numbers 156 through 166, 2021 are all rezoning ordinances certified for approval by the Metropolitan Development Commission. If no one wishes to call any of these rezonings down for public hearing, they will pass into law. Does anyone wish to call down any of the rezonings? Right, seeing no one, proposal numbers 156 through 166, 2021 will pass into law. Proposal number 167, 2021 is a rezoning ordinance, ordinance that was certified to the council for denial by the Metropolitan Development Commission. If no one wishes to call this proposal down for a public hearing, the MDC's denial will stand. Does anyone wish to call down proposal number 167? Right, seeing no one, proposal number 167, 2021, stand is denied. The next item on our agenda is special orders public hearing. Referred to, proposal number 132, referred to Administration and Finance Committee. Chairman Mascari.
Thank you, Mr. President. Proposal 132, 2021 was introduced on Tuesday, April 13th. The digest approves an additional $46,147,133 to the 2021 City Non-Department Budget Consolidated General Fund, for the City Community Justice Campus Subfund. It's to support the expenditures related to the completion of the Community Justice Campus. It passed out of committee 12-0. I so move.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, councilors. Are there comments from councilors? Councilor Ethan Evans.
Thank you, President Osley. I just had a clarification question.
Please proceed.
For the funds, we're, I believe in the committee, we discussed how they were going to be used for the CJC specifically. So would it be possible for whoever's on right now who would be knowledgeable on this to discuss just a briefly how they're going to be used exactly in this purpose?
Who can answer from administration? Ms. Reardon.
Good evening, Mr. President. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Evans. When we presented before the Admin and Finance Committee last month, we discussed that the CJC Fund was created by unanimous approval of the council back in 2018, knowing that there would be a number of reasons to create this fund and to fund this fund, to not only fund completion of the project, but also to just provide additional liquidity to enhance the overall credit of our security pledged in support of the bonds, but also to provide for future life cycle and maintenance costs of the facility. So specifically, we were required, in order to structure the financing in the way that we did to achieve the AAA rating that we achieved, was to create this fund as a credit enhancement. One of the factors that we were required to meet was to fund a debt service reserve fund, which is 1 year's maximum annual debt service in the amount of $37.5 million. So that's $37.5 million that we funded upfront that has to sit there until the construction is completed, at which time that will be released back to the city. We need every bit of that $37.5 million to complete construction of the facility. We have just a little bit under $100 million left in our project fund. The numbers from April are just rolling in now and we're processing them. But that $37.5 million will be required to help us finish the full construction of both the courthouse and the adult detention facility and all of the site completion. So I would be happy to go line by line. I don't think I should do that now because it would be perhaps too far in the weeds, but we need every bit of that money in order to complete all of the work that's to be done to complete both of those facilities, but we can't access that money until it's actually completed. So part of the reason for creating the CJC fund was to be able to fund those costs and then reimburse them once the debt service reserve funds are returned to the city.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. So sorry.
Go ahead, Councilor Evans.
It was just one follow-up to that. So I guess based on what you said, that there had to be a certain amount with withholding in the city at any given time. The appropriation that we're having right now, is that's coming out of our fund from the city, correct?
The creation and the funding of this fund, if I may, sir, back nearly 3 years ago, we foresaw that it would be appropriate to have this, to create this fund and to fund it with savings that we've been able to achieve in the interim. So every year, the controller's office over the last 3 years, when we have recognized savings, we have put some of those toward the funding of the CJC fund. And if Ken Clark is on the line, he would be able to talk about the specifics of that. But we knew that we were going to need this extra cash to sort of get us over the line until we can have the debt service reserve liquidated and returned to the city. So that was one of the reasons for this. We are ready to have substantial completion and final completion of both the adult detention facility and the courthouse before the end of this year. But so that we can pay those vendors, the creation of this CJC fund is really going to get us over that line. It's almost like kind of a bridge loan to ourselves, really. And we thought about that 3 years ago. We knew it was going to come up, and the council approved us to do that. So really all we're doing now is really carrying out proposal 208 2018.
Okay, I think I was getting hung up on the debt service fund versus the sub fund, and when you said there was a minimum amount required, you were talking about the debt service fund that needed to have $37.5 million in it at any given
Right.
time, correct?
Yes, and the funding of a debt service reserve fund is something that we've had to do on nearly all of our bond transactions. It's kind of like a security deposit that you're required to make upfront, so that if for some reason you're not able to make your bond payments, you've got 1 year's worth of bond payments in reserve. And you can't touch it unless for some reason you can't make your bond payments. And then the bondholders have the ability to access that money to pay themselves. Well, we haven't ever had to use that in the past, but for this particular transaction, what we have done is we have, as the rating agencies and the underwriters and the bond buyers wanted us to do, we've created that fund, but we have actually structured it in such a way that we can get that cash back, because once we are actually in the facility, then we have a surety, which is sort of a synthetic insurance product, which will kick in and will fund that debt service reserve. And then we can take the cash back. So that's 1 year's worth of debt service payments. And then there are also a few other expenditures related to a construction project of this magnitude that you can't really use bond funds for. And those are projects that will not have a life cycle as long as the life of the actual brick and mortar project. So those are things like furniture and technology, things that will, their useful life will expire before the bonds mature. So those are a few other things that we need to pay for. So back in 2018, really, we knew that would be the case. And so we planned for it. And so really the city has been, for lack of a better term, putting back savings that we have achieved in other areas for purposes of meeting those expenditures. And then when we get the 37.5 million back, we will reimburse ourselves.
Okay. I just making sure that there wasn't a minimum in the sub fund, and we were taking out everything and going against the ordinance that was passed in 2018. When you said there was a minimum in the debt service fund, that's what had my lines crossed at that point. So it made me think that the 46 million was over the 37.5 million for the. So.
Yeah, well, 46 million is obviously more than 37.5, right? But the purpose of creating the CJC fund was not just to meet 37.5. It was to demonstrate to our investors that we're planning not only to be able to pay to get the project up and running, but over time, we're going to also demonstrate that we're able to manage our assets and our resources in a responsible way so that we can pay for life cycle costs and we can pay for maintenance. So the council approved the authorized OFM to put money back, basically, for lack of a better term, so that we can meet those expenditures in the future. With a structure this big and a project this large, there are going to be life cycle costs, and we had to be able to demonstrate to our investors that we would be able to meet those requirements over time. And so that's why we created this fund. And I think, and I don't know whether Ken is on or not, but this isn't going to end now. We're going to continue to put money back for this project so that we can maintain it and so that we can ensure that it maintains, that it stays functional and stays in good repair. So the CJC fund is not going away. I think the second part of this proposal is that it becomes a special capital fund for purposes of maintaining this project and also other projects. And I don't know if Ken is on at this point. I know he was called away for an emergency, but
no, I think you explained it very well, Sarah.
Thank you
very much,
Chairman.
So are there additional comments or questions from councilors? Right. Seeing none, is there anyone in in the public assembly room who would like to comment on proposal 132? I see no one. Madam Clerk, do we have any comments online?
Mr. President, there were no comments submitted.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, councilors, if there are no additional comments on proposal number 132, I will ask Madam Clerk to do a roll call vote. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Adamson.
Councilor Adamson, aye.
Councilor Alane.
Councilor Alane, aye.
Councilor Bain.
Councilor Bain, aye.
Councilor Barth.
Barth, aye.
Councilor Boots.
Boots, aye.
Councilor Brown.
Brown, aye.
Councilor Carlino.
Counselor Carlino, aye.
Councilor Dilk.
Councilor Dilk, aye.
Councilor Ethan Evans.
Just one point. When you said it's included in the proposal, did you mean this proposal?
We're taking
The point about making it a permanent fund?
Councilor Evans, I'm not sure that this is the time now for the question. We're actually doing the vote.
I'm sorry. All right,
Okay.
yay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Jared Evans.
Councilor Jared Evans, yes.
Councilor Graves.
Councilor Graves, yes.
Councilor Gray.
Councilor Gray, yes.
Councilor Hart.
Councilor Hart, aye.
Councilor Jackson.
Councilor Jackson, aye.
Councilor Jones.
Counselor Jones, aye.
Councilor Larison.
Councilor Larison, aye.
Councilor Lewis.
Lewis, aye.
Councilor Mascari.
Councilor Mascari, aye.
Councilor McCormick.
Councilor McCormick, aye.
Councilor Mowry.
Councilor Mowry, aye.
Councilor Oliver. Councilor Oliver.
Councilor Oliver, did you hear that?
Thank you. Councilor Osley.
Councilor Osley, aye.
Councilor Potts.
Councilor Potts, aye.
Councilor Ray.
Councilor Ray, aye.
Councilor Robinson.
Councilor Robinson, aye.
Thank you, Mr. President. The vote is unanimous.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The next item on our agenda is proposal number 134. Referred to Public Safety and Criminal Justice Committee. Chairman Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Proposal 134, 2021 approves an additional appropriation of $100,000 in the 2021 budget of the Office of Public Health and Safety and the Consolidated County General Fund for the purpose of piloting a legal protection fund to provide immediate legal information, screenings, consultation, and representation to residents seeking asylum, pursuing citizenship, and those at risk of deportation. Jordan Rodriguez, the manager of talent acquisition for the Office of Finance and Management in the Resource Department, viewed a PowerPoint and showed and provided additional information on the Immigration Legal Services Fund. The mission being to access to legal support and representation to the immigrant community here in Marion County. This will help to ensure our immigrant neighbors have the opportunity to continue to contribute to our society, our local and economic community. The program design is focused on primarily prevention and intervention on assistance in obtaining citizenship, creation of education materials to demystify legal process, assistance with DACA renewals, and assistance obtaining a driver's license, insurance, and/or work authorization documents. Also, the fund would support activities ranging from primary prevention to intervention, the understanding that intervention is a much costlier but impactful activity. The city proposed to partner with private philanthropic organizations to provide an additional $200,000 to $300,000 to start the fund. Councilor Carlino moved, second by Councilor Mascari, to send proposal number 134 to the full council. The do pass recommendation. Motion carried by a vote of 8-3 with Councilor Ane,
Bain and Dilk casting the negative vote. Mr. President, I so move.
Second.
Second.
All right. Comments from councilors. Councilor Hart.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I just want to first begin by, talking to the council and for everybody in support of this. I respect the benevolent intent that is behind it. And, I went and I watched the committee hearing and I talked to the neighbors about it. And the first thing I really did was, analyze the function of our roles at the local government level. And when I look at what we're proposing here and what's proposed today with the use of local tax dollars, I see a federal citizenship conversation happening and not a local dialogue that's going on. When we talk about the functions we have in our local government, it's dealing with public safety, it's infrastructure, clean drinking water, disposal of waste, parks and recreation, libraries. That's what we're elected to look at. We're not elected to look at the citizenship of individuals. But again, I respect the benevolent intent. It is a philanthropic intent in which it seems that some industries have agreed to partner with, and that is a great on their behalf. When I see that the Office of Finance and Management found $100,000 for this initiative, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, if we have $100,000 available, actually the question I asked to my constituents and surroundings in the community is, if you had $100,000 available, what would you do with it? In our knowing the roles and the functions that we have as counselors in the city of Indianapolis. And they would mention things from fixing streets and potholes to addressing public safety to addressing mental health, which, as we know, mental illness is clearly a derivative of crime. And one of the things that we've seen a lot of in Indianapolis is surging is violence and crime. And that's what got me to thinking about more and what can we do, what more could we do with $100,000 and what could we let the philanthropic institutions do? So I encourage the philanthropic institutions that have pledged to match these dollars to continue to do so in the regards with those donations. And any counselor who wishes to do so, to donate to them accordingly. But when it comes to our city, with our role and our function, when we're going to be talking about our taxpayers' dollars and the constituents from what we're supposed to do, I believe we need to put those towards things that are going to impact our city, our residents, in terms of, number one, public safety right now. Because we have a surge of violence that's going on in Indianapolis, and this isn't going to do anything for it. So if we have $100,000 out there, I have a motion I would like to make for this proposal specifically. And I would like to move to amend Section 2 of Proposal 134, 2021 by deleting the language that is stricken through and added the underlined language to read as follows. That Section 2 would say, the Office of Public Health and Safety shall receive additional appropriations totaling $100,000 in the Character 3 of the Consolidated County General Fund for the purpose of piloting a mental health protection fund to provide immediate mental health information, screenings, treatment, and therapeutic consultation to residents. So that's my motion that I would like to make, Mr. President, if anybody would like to second.
Second.
All right, the motion's been properly moved and seconded. Is there discussion on the proposed amendment? Chairman Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Two quick things, Mr. President. One, big I ask my colleagues to support the proposal as written, as it's drafted, and know that we are currently working on a mental health component initiative we'll be rolling out in the next 30 days. So I'd ask you all to wait for that. Councilor Hart, we do respect your thought process on the mental health. I'd ask you to work with us on that, but I ask my colleagues to support the proposal 134 as it stands today. Second, Mr. President, if we can go to our General Counsel, Ms. Kim, to speak to our authority as it rests with addressing this issue in this proposal, that'll be helpful as well, Mr. President. Thank you.
Very good. Council Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Robinson, can I have a clarifying question?
Are you asking about our authority to amend the fiscal ordinance or our authority to pass the fiscal ordinance as drafted by OFM?
Ms. Kim, Councilor Hart was alluding to the fact that this is a federal issue dealing with citizenship and proposals of this nature. I'd ask you to speak to the authority for us to govern in the space this proposal speaks to.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Robinson. The council does have the authority to pass this fiscal ordinance and spend the money as stated in Proposal 134, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Ms. Kim.
All right, Councilor Mowry.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, while that is you know, one take I hear from Councilor Hart, you know, I tend to certainly agree with him. I think a lot of our constituencies would say that there are bigger issues to, you know, tackle than illegal immigration into our city. And to me, I think with the recent events that have happened in our city, just in the last year, not one in particular, but the many recent events, we're putting illegal immigration in the forefront of what we're concerned of, instead of looking at, you know, mental health, looking at how we can help people that have a mental health illness. And that's one thing that we've heard so often from many of our colleagues, is that there needs to be more money spent on mental health. But when we find money, we're spending it on illegal immigration. I think this is a great philanthropic thing for us to look at, but that's what it is. It's philanthropic, and we need to leave that be to our partners in philanthropy that can help us raise this money. Let them help it. Let them help. They're obviously eager to help. They've had very strong opinions on things, and I think, you know, they're looking to help. So let's reach out to them before we go dipping into the taxpayer dollar. Thank you.
Councilor McCormick, and I believe then Councilor Jared Evans.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to note that this is actually an issue of public health and public safety. Our immigrant members of our community are residents of our community. They are not all here illegal by their choice. Some of them came here with their families. They have been here for decades. They're dreamers, and they are paying taxes, and they are contributing to our community just as much as we are. They're frontline workers, they're essential workers, they're families, they're students, they're kids. And we need to represent them just as much as we represent anyone else in our community. And while I completely and 1,000% agree that the mental health issue that we have in our community and across this country is something that we need to address, this proposal is not the place to do that. I am open to having the conversation of doing this again, as Chairman Robinson said, and Councilor Hart, I would love to collaborate on something, to look for something going forward. This right now is something that that is about our immigrant community, and they need our support and just as much as anyone else in our community does. And so that's what I want to mention, that we are here to support them. We were elected to support them. For them to be continuing to contribute to our society, they need the access to become legal immigrants, right? And so that's what this is. The goal of this pilot program is to do, is to help them in becoming legal immigrants, so we don't label them as illegal, and that they're more, they can contribute even further to our community and our society.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Jared Evans.
Thank you, President Osley. One, I want to be very clear, and I'm unequivocally opposed to this amendment. And I will be even more clear in saying I don't respect the amendment, and I don't respect the language that's in the amendment and the intent. This is nothing more than political posturing. Where were these arguments when the state of Indiana takes our road funding and gives it to other communities? Where is the arguments when the state of Indiana takes our education funding and gives it to other communities and our people have to raise taxes? Where was this argument when the city of Indianapolis had to use its own tax revenue to do pre-K schooling, because we know it's an essential service to the city of Indianapolis? When the federal or state levels are not doing their jobs, it's up to cities to pick it up and do what's right by their people. I encourage all of my colleagues to absolutely vote no on this amendment and to support the proposal as is. Thank you.
Very good. Councilor Hart.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to follow up and finish and say, in doing this, I didn't take the proposal lightly. I did my research. I looked into what the other cities were doing, and I watched the committee hearing. The cities of Denver were mentioned, the cities of Chicago were mentioned, and I went further into research to seeing what New York is doing. This is a pilot fund, and that's how it started in every other one of the cities. And what cautions me on this is that we start with $100,000, but where does it end? In Denver, it's up to 500,000. In Chicago, it's $1 million. In New York, it's 10 million. And when we start taking those dollars away from the functions that we are elected to do, again, which are public safety, infrastructure, making sure we have clean water, all those things that are our normal functions, we take away from. When we have a large list of institutions that are out there doing this work today, we have the Catholic Charities in Indianapolis that have immigrant legal funds. We have the Indiana Legal Services that have Immigrants and Language Rights Center, the Mariposa Legal Center. We have the National Immigrant Justice Center, the Neighborhood Christian Legal Clinic. All of them work in areas of legal and non-legal assistance that are already out there today, that those same philanthropic institutions can give those dollars to increase the fund on. And finally, we as counselors can do more than just show up here and pass proposals and spend money. There's so much power in the voice and words and connecting people. We have just as much ability to be the microphone of the people, to connect people to organizations and organizations to people, that we don't have to do it by spending people's dollars. We can do it by just going out in the community and being leaders. And it doesn't mean writing a check every time you have a good idea. So Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, I'll go ahead and yield my time.
Thank you, Councilor. Additional comments? Councilor Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I find it interesting, the notion that this is seen as a novel concept and that it's something that should be relegated just to philanthropy. To me, I see a little bit of this pilot program as a parallel to the Public Defender's Office. Oddly enough, 100 years ago, the same arguments were being made about the Public Defender's Office, that it should be relegated to philanthropy, to donated dollars, that local government doesn't have any role in it. It wasn't until the 19-teens that public defender offices were being funded by municipal government, and it wasn't until the 40s that it became a statewide function. So before that, it was legal aid societies that were primarily responsible for providing defense, for providing legal services to those that could not afford it or could not access it. So I really don't see this as novel in terms of local government being able to step into it. And this isn't the only situation where city government has participated in making knowledge about the processes and the services available to our residents. We right now pay for an ombudsman to help small businesses navigate the permitting, licensing, code enforcement issues that they face on a regular basis, and that's provided to them at no cost. So I encourage my fellow councilors to continue to support the proposal as written, to vote against the amendment to fund the pilot program and empower our residents so that way they may remain at home here in Indianapolis. Thank you.
Very good. Councilor Ethan Evans.
Thank you, President Mosley. And I just want to agree with most of what's been said and just follow that up with, I don't think $100,000 would be nearly enough to cover what Councilor Hart, and I do appreciate where his heart's coming from, but it's got to be a lot bigger than that if we're thinking about tackling the issue of mental illness in the city. The AIC, when it was planned out and was finally built and thankfully is operating, is $13+ million on the east side near the CJC. And we need more of those. We need more 13+ million, 16+ million ideas and projects. And we can't just settle for $100,000 here and there. We need to look at big projects, big plans. So I'm looking forward to what Chairman Robinson has with his proposal coming up. I'm looking forward to making sure that we can get crisis response that is dedicated to solely mental health crises, making sure that we have dispatchers that are dedicated mental health clinicians, things along those lines that we can get proposals for on the city side and the county side. Concrete, objective things that we know work in other cities and can be implemented right now and here. So if you want to help, then we all can help get behind those ideas right here and now that can help people. Let's do that. So.
Very good, Councilor. Councilor Carlino.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request to call a question on the amendment, please.
Second.
All right. Madam Clerk, we have a councilor who has called the question. It's been seconded. Will you do a roll call, please?
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Adamson.
Aye.
Councilor Ane.
Aye. Aye.
Councilor Bain.
Councilor Bain, aye.
Councilor Barth.
Barth, aye.
Councilor Boots.
Boots, aye.
Councilor Brown.
Just for clarification, this is on calling to question?
Yes.
That is correct.
Aye.
Councilor Carlino.
Councilor Carlino, aye.
Councilor Dill.
Ms. Clerk, this is
Councilor
Ms.
Dill,
Johnson.
aye.
Can I say something? Madam Clerk?
Yes.
I believe the motion to call the question was on the amendment, not the proposal. Can we restart the vote, please?
Yes, we want to restart the.
Yes.
Okay.
So we are voting on the amendment, Madam Clerk.
I think we're voting
to call the question
on the amendment.
Right, the call the question on the amendment. Okay. Councilor Adamson.
Councilor Adamson, aye.
Councilor Ane.
Councilor Ane, aye on the amendment.
Councilor Bain.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'm sorry, but my internet's cutting out a little bit, and I might not be the only one. But are we voting on the amendment, or are we voting on calling the question for the amendment?
Yes. Councilor Kim, would you provide some clarification, please?
We're voting on the motion to call the question. My apologies.
Okay, thank you.
An aye vote would be would have the effect of ending the debate.
Councilor Bain, your vote.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilor Barth.
Barth, aye.
Councilor Boots.
Boots, aye.
Councilor Brown.
Brown, aye.
Councilor Carlino.
Councilor Carlino, aye.
Councilor Dilk.
Councilor Dilk, aye.
Councilor Ethan Evans.
Councilor Ethan Evans, aye.
Councilor Jared Evans.
Councilor Jared Evans, aye.
Councilor Graves.
Councilor Graves, aye.
Councilor Gray.
Councilor Gray, aye.
Councilor Hart.
Councilor Hart, aye.
Councilor Jackson.
Jackson, aye.
Counselor Jones,
Counselor Jones, aye.
Counselor Larison,
Counselor Larison, aye.
Counselor Lewis,
Lewis, aye.
Counselor Mascari,
Counselor Mascari, aye.
Counselor McCormick,
McCormick, aye.
Counselor Mowry,
As a firm believer in a good debate, no.
Counselor Oliver,
Counselor Oliver, aye.
Counselor Osley,
Counselor Osley, aye.
Counselor Potts,
Counselor Potts, aye.
Counselor Ray,
Counselor Ray, aye.
Counselor Robinson.
Counselor Robinson, aye.
You, Mr. President, the vote 24 yay, 1 nay.
Right, so we
Madam
have
Clerk, I'd
now
like to-
voted to call the question.
President,
We will. Yes, Counselor Anay.
my feed was cutting out as well. It was my understanding we were voting on the amendment. I voted signaling that I do not support shutting the debate down. I'd like my vote to reflect nay.
Thank you. And
This is
we do
Counselor
understand
Bain, and
that,
I would like to do the same as well.
thank you. Very good. That's very good. Noted, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
All right, Madam Clerk, I'd like to take a roll call on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Counselor Adamson,
Counselor Adamson, no.
Counselor Anay,
Nay, aye.
Counselor Bain,
Counselor Bain, aye.
Counselor Barth,
Barth, nay.
Counselor Boots,
Boots, nay.
Counselor Brown,
Brown, nay.
Counselor Carlino,
Counselor Carlino, no.
Counselor Dilk,
Counselor Dilk, aye.
Counselor Ethan Evans,
Counselor Ethan Evans, nay.
Counselor Jared Evans,
Counselor Jared Evans, nay.
Counselor Graves,
Counselor Graves, nay.
Counselor Gray,
Counselor Gray, nay.
Counselor Hart,
Counselor Hart, aye.
Counselor Jackson,
Jackson, nay.
Counselor Jones,
Counselor Jones, nay.
Counselor Larison,
Counselor Larison, nay.
Counselor Lewis,
Lewis, nay.
Counselor Mascari,
No.
Counselor McCormick,
McCormick, nay.
Counselor Mowry,
Counselor Mowry, yes.
Counselor Oliver,
Counselor Oliver, no.
Counselor Osley,
Counselor Osley, nay.
Counselor Potts,
Counselor Potts, nay.
Counselor Ray,
Counselor Ray, nay.
Counselor Robinson.
Robinson, nay.
Mr. President, I have 5 yay, 20 nay.
Thank you, Madam
On the
Clerk.
amendment.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The amendment fails. I'd like to go back then to proposal number 134 and any additional comments on 134 from councilors. Councilor McCormick.
Hi, thank you, Mr. President. If you so allow, I would like to introduce Director Rodriguez from the Office of Public Health and Safety to make a few comments on this proposal.
Please.
Thank you, Councilor McCormick. And Mr. President, may I speak?
Yes, please. And welcome, Ms. Rodriguez.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank all the counselors that have worked on this. It's an amazing proposal. And the Office of Public Health and Safety is here to not say that we only will dedicate $100,000, but we're going to dedicate $150,000 to this proposal. It's an amazing proposal. The mayor, this administration is very supportive of all people living in Marion County, including our immigrant neighbors, and they do deserve representation, just like everybody else. And so we are really passionate about what this could do for people. Like Councilor McCormick mentioned, it's not just, they're not just immigrants, right? They are our neighbors. They are school teachers, they are students, they are taxpayers, they are children, they are people that have come here from all walks of life. And we believe that they do deserve legal representation, just like everybody else, in some of the most trying times. So I do implore that this council approve this proposal tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Any questions for the Director of OPHS? I've seen none. Councilor Mowry.
Thank you, Mr. President. The director just said that they were not only dedicating 100,000, they're going to dedicate 150,000. Where does that extra 50,000 come from, and where are we pulling that away? What would that have gone towards?
Ms. Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. And Councilor Mallory, I appreciate the question. Actually, it's coming out of our Character 3 money. We have found some money that was not being used, so it's not taking away from anything. We are able to dedicate it fully to this proposal without having to interrupt any other services.
All right. Councilor
Follow up, Mr. President. Thank you. So if we found 50,000 extra in your Character 3, refresh me, has OPHS came forth in your time or before your time this year, even for any additional appropriations at all?
Ms. Rodriguez, I know that you are new. I don't know if you can answer it, fine. If you cannot, that'll be fine as well.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was going to say, I'm sorry, I am pretty new and I have no idea what happened prior to me, so I don't want to speak on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Renee.
Is Public Defender Bob Hill on the call by any chance?
Madam Clerk, do you know?
No, he is not.
No, I don't see him.
I thought so. I had reached out to the Public Defender's Office several times prior to this coming this evening. I had some questions as it relates to being able to funnel this money through the Public Defender's Office to create some form of immigrant unit. I was unable to get any response, so I will be a nay. And then for Director Rodriguez, Director, do you anticipate, we're sitting here at 8:41, May 10th, 2020, do you anticipate any time in the next 6-7 months that your office will be coming back to this council for any additional appropriations, any new fiscals?
Sorry, Ms. Rodriguez, are you able to answer?
I'm sorry, my internet was cutting out and I got to pause.
That's no problem. I was just curious. We're sitting here May the 10th, 2021, 8:52. Do you anticipate in the next 6-7 months through this year, your office coming back before this council to ask for any additional appropriations?
Councilor Ane, I apologize. I cannot speak to the future. I don't want to say yes or no to that.
Sure. Well, I just wanted to be reflected that the office has come today to say that they've got extra money. I'll be interested to see as the year progresses whether that's really the case or not. I yield back.
Very good. Councilor McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. President. We actually did have some conversations with the Public Defender's Office, and if I may, I'd like to ask our CFO, Herget, to comment on this.
Mr. Herget, are you available?
Yes, Mr. President, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor McCormick. Yes, as a follow-up from the Public Safety Committee meeting a few weeks back, staff did follow up with Public Defender Hill, and I believe it was somewhat communicated during the committee meeting, but probably not as clearly as it could have been. The type of legal services that this potential contract that you are considering this evening between OPHS and an outside provider for legal services to our county's immigrant population are the type of legal services that it wouldn't necessarily be germane for the public defender to provide. So there are certainly some legal services that the Public Defender's Agency can and should provide to the immigrant population, but just based on statute and the jurisdiction and the mission of the county public defender, the type of services that I believe it's the intent of both the Office of Public Health and Safety and the sponsors of this proposal, the type of legal services that we're contemplating aren't the same type of services that our county public defender agency should provide. So that was the feedback we were able to get from Public Defender Hill. Thank you, Mr. President.
I need to have one comment on that.
Mr. Just a second, Councilor Nick. Councilor Carlino.
Mr. President, this followed my line. I just wanted to get through with this, if that's possible. This followed my line of questioning.
I'm sorry, but let me get to Councilor Carlino because you had said you were yielding your time. Councilor Carlino.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to briefly speak to the $150,000 mention from our incoming director. It was the authors, Councilor McCormick and I, who really worked with council staff and with our Director of Public Health and Safety and our Controller, Office of Finance and Management, to make sure we really did want to push for an additional, not just $100,000. So I do want to call that out and say that that was a team effort, and we do appreciate the director and all teams involved working on ensuring we reached a number that was in our minds would be sufficient for a pilot, so that we could get some good data back to monitor the effectiveness of this program. So I do want to say thank you to the director and the teams involved on that. And Mr. President, when time allows, if you will so have, we do have a speaker also who would like to share with us some information from the Immigrant Welcome Center. We have the CEO, Hull, on the line tonight, and at your leisure and when you feel it's appropriate, I know she would love to contribute to the conversation, sir. Thank you.
All right, very good, Councilor Carlino. Councilor Nay.
I yield back my time.
Very good. Additional comments? Then, yes, Councilor Mowry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wasn't sure if you were going to say something earlier when I had asked my question about OPHS and any additional appropriations requested this year. I wasn't sure if you were going to ask somebody else on the call or on this meeting right now if they knew of anything along those lines. And I'd like to have clarification on that, because I think that's important to know before we vote on this.
All right, Councilor Mowry. I do see the controller on the call, Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. President. We did have an appropriation that we brought before the council and was approved for a couple of different items for OPHS. One of them was taking over the mediation center that used to be with the Marion County Prosecutor's Office. It was a partnership between the Office of Public Health and Safety and the Marion County Prosecutor's Office to appropriately place that mediation center in a different office, which they thought that made more sense than in the prosecutor's office because of their role. That fiscal also included, if I recall correctly, some additional materials for our violence intervention team as well. I believe it provided a one-time expense to purchase protective gear for them, so that in their work we can make sure that they're safe and protected as they do that work. I don't recall what else was off the top of my head. I apologize. I don't recall what else was in that, Leader Mowry, but I do know that appropriation.
Roughly how much, Controller Clark, was that amount?
I don't know that off the top of my head, but I can look it up.
Greater or less than $50,000? $150,000.
It was greater.
So after asking for more money, we now find $150,000 surplus in the budget of OPHS after asking for more money. Is that what I'm understanding? Is that correct?
That's
on
accurate
surface level?
today.
Okay, so after asking for more money, now we've spent more money that we found before. I'm just confused about how all this works, but apparently, because it seems to me that if we have to ask for more money previously, it doesn't seem like this is the place to spend more money now.
Mr. President, if I may, one more comment.
Yes, Mr. Controller, please go ahead.
As is the case with all of our budgets and all the agency and department budgets, everything is a matter of priorities and flexibility to be able to manage the year and anything that may be coming upon our plates as we look forward. New initiatives are often discussed with many members of the council. I'm always open to those new initiatives that anybody may be interested in discussing in ways we can invest our dollars to address issues in our community. And this is one of those that is a priority of the mayor and the administration.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Controller. Councilor Potts.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to just clarify, I suppose, in looking at the dollar figures that we're talking about 1/10 of 1/10 of 1% of our city's annual budget being dedicated to a fund that is going to help families who perhaps had to flee a country with their children to find a safe place to live, or who want to become a part of the beautiful country that we all call home. So I think of every vote that we take here as a council, it's an expression of our values. It dictates what we hold true as the values of our city. And so when it comes to this vote tonight, I so strongly encourage my colleagues to vote yes on this. And if the lead authors will have it, I would love to be added as a co-sponsor. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor. Additional comments from councilors? All right, seeing none, is there anyone in the public assembly room who would like to comment on proposal 134? All right, seeing no one. Madam Clerk, do we have any comments online on proposal 134?
No, Mr. President, we do not have any comments.
All right, very good. I would like now then to ask Ms. Hull, Gurinder Hull, to introduce herself. We want to welcome you, and we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, President Osley and members of the City County Council. Thank you, Councilor Carlino and McCormick, for inviting me to this important discussion. I am really honored to be able to share with you that this is a step in the right direction that our council is talking about today. There have been a lot of questions that have been raised about why we should be spending money on those individuals who do not have the appropriate kind of documentation. And I'd just like to share some numbers with you as far as the economic impact of these individuals. And these numbers are from the New American Economy. It's a national partner organization. In 2018, the immigrant population in Marion County itself paid $1.2 billion in taxes. It's with a B. They also spent $3.3 billion. So their spending power is to be something to be reckoned with. Also, the immigrant community members are 16 to 64 years old. They have unique skills where they have about 25.3% of them have less than high school education, yet 17% of them have a bachelor's degree. The ability to have this unique skill set at both the end of the spectrum gives them the ability to be able to help the economy engine in the Marion County going. They are our frontline workers. They are our professors. They are individuals like me. And I have complete faith in our ability to be able to help these individuals get the assistance that they need so that they can get to that path of citizenship so that they can become voting members of our community. It is also important for me to point out for our city county councilors who talked about the impact of the legal services. Yes, there are 8 low-income legal service providers who specifically address the needs of these immigrant community members. However, the calls that the Immigrant Welcome Center gets through our helpline each and every single day, 1 in 3 of our callers indicate that that their legal needs are not being met. Despite the ability despite the presence of these legal service providers, the needs of them of these immigrant members are not being met. And as some of our counselors have duly noted, the services that they need are beyond the purview of either the prosecutor's office or the public defender's office. They need specific assistance that cannot be addressed by those. I thank you for your time, and if there are any questions, I would welcome those.
Very good. And thank you again, Ms. Hull. If there are no questions of Ms. Hull, Councilor Mowry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Hull, thank you for your presentation and your statements there. My question, I guess, I have, you mentioned the impact of how much money is generated within the immigrant community. Is what I think you said. It was 1.3 billion. Was that right?
That is correct. $1.2 billion in 2018. It was paid in
Marion
taxes.
County, right?
Correct. There are about 476 immigrants who live in Marion County. Yes.
What was the total overall number for that, though, in Marion County?
I'm sorry. Can you ask your question perhaps a different way? I'm not sure.
The total overall number in Marion County. You said it was 1.2 or 3 billion.
Billion. Yes.
Yeah, what was the total overall, like for all of Marion County? Do you know that number?
I'm sorry. I do not have that number in front of me. I apologize.
Okay. Well, that's fine. Maybe someone else on the call can answer. Maybe Controller Clark can answer if maybe he knows. But if it's not,
to clarify, these are taxes that are federal, state, and local taxes. So I'm giving you a composite number of the taxes that are being paid by our immigrant neighbors. I'm sorry, I spoke over you. Apologies.
No, you're fine. Absolutely. I appreciate you expanding your explanation. I think, like I said all along, I think this is a great philanthropic cause. I think it needs to be that as a philanthropic cause. I think I saw, and Mr. President, and this is not a question, I guess, a comment so much. I think I saw Councilor Bain's hand up prior to Ms. Hall speaking. So maybe he has a question, but I will yield back at this point. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks so much. Are there additional comments or questions from councilors? All right, seeing none then, I will ask Madam Clerk to do a roll call.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Adamson.
Councilor Adamson, aye.
Councilor Ane.
Councilor Ane, nay.
Councilor Bain.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Just real quickly, I want to echo the words of one of my colleagues that said, budgets reflect your values and priorities, and that is why I voted yay on the previous amendment and will be voting nay on this proposal.
Thank you. Councilor Barth.
Barth, aye.
Councilor Boots.
Boots, aye.
Councilor Brown.
Brown, aye.
Councilor Carlino.
Councilor Carlino, aye.
Councilor Dilk.
Councilor Dilk, nay.
Councilor Ethan Evans.
Councilor Ethan Evans, aye.
Councilor Jared Evans.
Councilor Jared Evans, aye.
Councilor Graves. Councilor Graves.
Councilor Graves, aye.
Thank you. Councilor Gray.
Councilor Gray, aye.
Councilor Hart.
Councilor Hart, nay.
Councilor Jackson.
Councilor Jackson, aye.
Councilor Jones.
Councilor Jones, aye.
Councilor Larison.
Councilor Larison, aye.
Councilor Lewis.
Aye.
Councilor Mascari.
Councilor Mascari, aye.
Councilor McCormick.
McCormick, aye.
Councilor Mowry.
Councilor Mowry, nay.
Councilor Oliver.
Counselor Oliver, aye.
Counselor Osley? Counselor Potts?
Counselor Potts, aye.
Counselor Ray?
Counselor Ray, aye.
Counselor Robinson?
Robinson, aye.
Thank you, Mr. President. 20 yay, 5 nay.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. There is no business under special orders unfinished business, so we will now proceed to special orders final adoption. Earlier, under adoption of the agenda, a motion carried to advance proposal number 170, 2021 for action this evening under final adoption. Proposal 170 ratified public health orders related to COVID-19. I believe that Dr. Kane is here to speak to proposal 170. Dr. Kane, are you still on the line?
Yes, I am.
All right, so we are now talking about proposal number 170. We'd like to hear from you on proposal 170, and I do believe also Mr. Babcock is here alongside of you. Dr. Kane.
Yes. So I thank you, City Council President Bob Osley and the other members of the Indianapolis City Council. Today, we had the Senate Bill number 5, which provides for additional approval of local health departments' public health emergency orders to be enacted or approved by our local legislative body. And the governor had vetoed that Senate Bill 5, but it was overridden by our state legislative House of Representatives and state Senate body. And so as a result, I'm coming to the council to ask both of you to swiftly take action today, because as of today, immediately once that bill was paused, it added additional requirements for us to have a public health emergency order, which meant that we had to pass a approval by the city county council in order to enact our public health emergency orders. Let me just say this: throughout our COVID-19 pandemic, the Marion County Public Health Department has worked very closely with our local, state, and federal officials, as well as our partners in health, education, and the many sectors of our economy, embracing best practices and what we consider smart public health policies while preserving and protecting our local economy to the greatest extent possible. The ability to make quick decisions at a local level is very critical to protecting our Hoosiers during a public health crisis. And so I would like to extend a request to President Bob Osley and the rest of the Indianapolis City Council members to take swift action tonight to ratify the latest public health orders so that we can keep our residents safe and our city headed back on track based on the passing of the Senate Bill 5 today.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Dr. Kane, and thank you for your leadership in these unprecedented times. I'm going to ask for a motion on proposal 170 from members of the council.
So moved, Mr. President.
Second.
All right, very good. Thank you, councilors. Councilor Mowry.
Is this to understand there's not going to be a discussion on this proposal?
Oh, yes, there will be discussion.
Okay. I just want to make sure. So my question for Dr. Kane, if I may, Mr. President.
Of course.
Dr. Kane, let's say that tonight this council body decides not to pass this proposal, where does that leave Marion County? What restrictions does that leave us with at the end of the night if we do not pass this proposal?
So basically, if you do not pass this proposal, we have no restrictions for Marion County if this public emergency orders are not passed tonight.
Is that on par with the rest of the state then?
I believe that is the case. I believe that there's no restrictions at all for the state of Indiana.
Dr. Kane, Mr. President, do you mind if I chime in? Minority Leader Maury as well.
Please call Mr. Babcock, please.
You're already in there, Mr. Babcock. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to clarify Dr. Kane's statement. As of the passage of the Senate bill, our assumption is, or the veto, I'm sorry, our assumption is that the restrictions in other counties are not in place. But we also do believe that they are going through a similar process as we are here, because there are other counties in the state of Indiana that have had restrictions similar to us. So, for example, Elkhart, Monroe, and a few others, because they have seen similar increases across the last 14 months of COVID-19, as well as they have a different demographic urban setting than some of our other rural neighbors and counties. So I just wanted to make that clarification for you, sir.
So just for the folks listening at home, if they don't have a map in front of them, any of those counties that you listed, are any of those a donut county?
No, they're not donut counties, and I can't speak off the top of my head of what restrictions are in some of the surrounding counties. I do know some had restrictions early on, whether or not they are in place at the moment.
Am I understanding correctly then, technically speaking, as of right now, until we pass this, we don't have any restrictions?
Councilor Maury, be sure to wait to be recognized. Now go ahead and proceed with your follow-up question, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, for recognizing me. Anyway, so am I to understand correctly that, am I understanding correctly, I guess more so, that right now we do not have restrictions, technically speaking, since the veto's been overridden?
Technically speaking, yeah, based on the way that our lawyers have interpreted the law, this needs to be passed tonight to reinstate the restrictions listed in the public health orders that are granted by 1622-8 for the local health officer here in Marion County.
And then, Mr. President, if I may so be recognized one more time. Sorry, I think your mic was off. I couldn't.
Sure. Yes. Once more, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. So passage of this bill, this proposal tonight, when does this expire? How do we look at it again? When do we decide that Dr. Virginia Kane has been completely fed up with COVID and she's overreacting to some things, and we need to react in a different way? How do we do that then if we give her sole reins to this?
Mr. President, could I defer to the lawyers on that question before I opine?
Oh, of course, Mr. Babcock.
It's TK. I was going to ask her to talk about the actual process with the council and these orders.
All right, Councilor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Maury, your question was, if we don't pass this tonight, what is the effect of the public health orders? Is that your question?
I'm sorry, no, I was asking, so how does this get rescinded if it passes tonight? And she said, and Dr. Kane says that we need to be under, a mask mandate or go into lockdown. How do we combat, what she says? How do we take that into final call? Like, how do we, overturn what she says?
By voting no tonight, it would rescind pending public health orders related to the COVID-19 pandemic.
So it passes tonight. She says we need further restrictions. That's the end all say all.
No, I'm sorry. Your question was, how do we rescind the current public health orders? Is that your question?
No, I'm saying, so if it passes tonight, and if Dr. Kane thinks we need mask mandates, and say 25 counselors say we don't need mask mandates anymore because 100% of people are vaccinated, how do we go back to that and look at how do we rescind her order?
conceivably the council could rescind their approval. So proposal 170 could be rescinded in a future council meeting.
Thank you,
Does that answer your question, Councilor Maurer?
I think I understand. So I guess there's not really anything we can do once she has final say. Then there's not much we can do, which I that's what I was hoping. I appreciate your further explanation, and I will defer back to President Osley, and he can pick on someone else now. Thank you, President.
Very good. Thank you, Councilor. Additional comments, Councilor Chairman Pascari.
Wrong button. Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to thank Dr. Kane and Dr. Was it Bach? Now,
Yes, Dr. Box.
Dr. Bach don't have any say anywhere at all now, I understand. Thank God that we're surviving this. We've lost over 600,000 people in the country. Hopefully this is going to end pretty soon, but I'm all for whatever Dr. Virginia Kane says, because she knows more about it than me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Additional comments from councilors. Councilor Bay.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have some brief comments and observations on this. Since being caucused in last August, this is something that I've advocated for, is that the legislative branch of the city county should be the ones creating ordinances, creating crimes, creating penalties, creating guidelines. And that's not the duty of the executive branch. So when I seen proposal 170 at first and seen what we were doing here, momentarily I thought we were heading the right direction. Unfortunately, though, it looks like we're inching there, because proposal 170 seems very vague. It doesn't actually reinstate the authority that we should have as the legislative body. All we are doing here is shifting all of our responsibility over to the county health department. I think what we should do here is we should have timelines on the guidelines that we are passing. For example, if we look at proposal 170, it says Public Health Order 4-2021 schools. Well, we are not giving specific guidance on what that should be. So we have no idea what that could look like. We're just giving carte blanche authority back to the executive branch, which I think is very misguided. It's not what we should be doing here. Maybe if we looked at it and said, we are going to grant authority until the city county council meets again, and we kind of do that on a rotating basis to where you have to continually come and prove to the elected leaders of Marion County that we should continue to do this. We should continue to have all these restrictions in place. Then that's something that I think we could talk about. But unfortunately here, all we are doing is rubber stamping what we have been doing. It doesn't, the legislature should be taking a greater step here. We are the legislative body, and we are shirking all responsibility right now. We should be having specific guidelines that we hand down that the executive branch then implements, which is their duty. It's our job to create the guidelines. So I wish we were taking a more tactful approach here, but unfortunately we're not. And therefore, I don't think I can support proposal 170 tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Leader Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've often shared that I believe my colleagues are made up, or the council is made up of some amazingly smart individuals with very diverse backgrounds and expertise. However, when I check our current roster, there are no medical doctors that serve on the Indianapolis City County Council. Therefore, I think it's up to us as leaders of this community to get behind Dr. Kane. I feel like she has led us with grace. She's followed the science, And I believe that we should follow her lead. It's not about rubber stamping her, what she puts in front of us. It's about supporting her efforts. And again, she's the expert, not us.
Thank you very much. Additional comments? Councilor Ethan Evans.
Thank you, President Osley. I first want to thank Dr. Kane for her excellent leadership throughout this entire pandemic from 2020 on through this year. She's been amazing. Her leadership department has been outstanding, guiding our city through one of the toughest points in our history. I did just want to ask one thing about the public health order that's part of the proposal. And I am behind like 99% of it. I just want one thing I was curious about, and obviously I don't have a background in medical, so I guess I was just asking for more of an explanation because of what I've heard from the CDC on TV, talking about the new vaccination guidelines. So I kind of was just curious about why nothing about the vaccination and the vaccinated people going out in public was mentioned for the exceptions.
So I'm not quite sure I'm not quite sure I've got your questions. I know that when someone is exposed to someone who's positive, that anyone with, especially like, for example, in the school systems, from a contact tracing standpoint, that you can be within 3 feet. Anyone within 3 feet of that individual would have to be quarantined and isolated anywhere from we'd like 10 to 14 days. But if you are fully immunized, okay, whether you're staff or a student, you wouldn't have to do that quarantine or isolation. And that is included in at least, for example, the school guidelines. The other thing, there's some travel and for adults, and even like visiting long-term care facilities, that if you're fully immunized and you're exposed to someone who's positive, you do not have to quarantine and do isolation. So that is included in some of our public health orders that you have before you.
I'd just like to add, if I may, Mr. President, to Councilor Evans' question. So as we discussed earlier, the recommendations come down from the CDC about how to utilize vaccines, how to, put mask mandates in place, capacity in place, and then it's up to the local health officer to make decisions, and then either they be enforceable decisions or they be recommendations. And then when it comes to vaccines, that's actually run by the State Department of Health, and they put in the guidelines in place for local health officers when it comes to who can get a vaccine and who at this time and who's eligible, et cetera, et cetera. And so the way these orders are set up, assuming the council approves, they'll go back into force. And then if there's changes, be they less strict, or they, some unfortunate reason that they have to become stricter, then they come before the council again. And it's the same thing when it comes to rescinding. They can easily be rescinded by the council at a certain later date and time, which I assume Dr. Kane and myself will come back and ask for. And, once we get to that point, I think hopefully we all can celebrate because we've reached, a significant number of people vaccinated. Our case rates are down, our positivity rates are down, and, we've gotten through this unfortunate global pandemic. So that's kind of the process part to this, if that helps clarify.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Councilor Jared Evans.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dr. Virginia Kane, it's nice to see you. And like everybody else has said, really appreciate the hard work that you put in for the city. Just a quick question here. So at what point do we take into consideration, we're hearing a lot of things in the news now that herd immunity may not be reached because people are now choosing not to get vaccinated. At what point do we kind of put a date to where it's like at this point, everyone who wanted to get vaccinated should have been able to have gotten vaccinated. And you know, if you are still choosing not to get vaccinated, you're now that's your fault. You know, you're at your own risk of getting this virus. Does that kind of go in through any of the thought processes? Because I'm just thinking out a little bit, and it's like, at what point, or should we put a date out there to say that, you know, at this certain date, we're going to loosen restrictions because, you know, you've had plenty of time, ample time to get vaccinated?
So we're sort of at a race, like a marathon or however you want to call it, because we have variant resistant strains that are more contagious. They have more severe complications. And because they're more contagious, they can affect more people. Our issue is that, just normally talking to you, Councilor Evans, I'm putting out invisible respiratory droplets in the air, and I feel great, I look great, so I'm not aware that I'm infected, but those droplets can remain in the air for 30 minutes or longer. I can leave that space and somebody else come and walk in that space and inhale and become infected. So I know there are leading experts saying that we can't reach herd immunity in the country, but it does not necessarily mean we can't reach herd immunity in our community. And so we want to be very aggressive as much as we can, try to get everybody vaccinated. Our goal is to try to get it done by the end of August, that we can hopefully reach herd immunity in our community. It's tough because everyone's not eligible for the vaccine. Just today, CDC and the FDA have approved vaccinations for children going down from age 12 to 15. And so we'll shortly be able to reach that group. But we have our work cut out for us. But I think you're going to have like some undergraduate academic institutions. They'll start providing vaccination for college students. We will continue to provide additional resources for our school systems to try to vaccinate individuals between 12 to 8th grade to 12th grade, or 12 to our 16 and 17-year-olds. We're hoping that now that we supposedly have ample vaccines, that we can get those vaccines now into private doctors' offices. You know, people know their doctors, they're trusted leaders, but we have them in our fairly qualified community health centers, and we're now just working on getting them back into our private providers. And I think once we can reach that step, I think we'll see a significant increase in the number of individuals vaccinated. No doubt about it, we do have issues with vaccine hesitancy, and we're still working on access.
Thank you. Director Babcock.
Yeah, Mr. President, thank you for a second. I just wanted to clarify that when Dr. Kane's talking about, hopefully, sometime in the relatively near future we can get there, that's just a hope, and we're still going to follow the science. And so I don't want anyone either on the council or listening at home to think that a date certain for when we will, reach that point has been stated tonight and will be stated. We're always going to follow the science, and we're not going to set arbitrary dates about decision making.
Very good. Thank you. Councilor McCormick, and then Chairwoman Jackson.
Hi, thank you, Mr. President. I just want to make sure we don't forget about our residents that aren't able to get the vaccine yet. So those now that will be under 12, and then those that are autoimmune compromised. So when we talk about like the herd immunity and those who had their chance to get the vaccine, that Councilor Evans, I agree with what you said, but I also want to make sure we don't forget about those populations, that we are still watching out for them as we're going forward with these. And again, thank you, Dr. Kane and Director Babcock, for being on here. Your work over the last 15 months has been crucial, and I'm very appreciative, as I know everyone else is.
Thank you very much. Chairwoman Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dr. Kane, for your leadership on this. I know so many talk so many highly of you, including myself, and what Mr. Babcock said about following the science. And I think that's very important too. And I think that's why I think in Marion County, the success rates have been very good. We've been good at keeping the death rates down, and they're continue to go down. I think we had some spikes and then we got them back down. And like Councilman McCormick just said, everybody cannot get the shot. You got autoimmune, antiphylactic, you got people who have transplants. If they've had a transplant recently in the last couple of years, they cannot get this shot. So it's up to us to make sure that we're helping to protect them. They cannot stay in a house 24/7. They have to still do daily chores as well. So it is also our job as well to help protect them. And we're not the medical team or the medical experts, as Majority Leader Lewis said. So I do believe in the direction and where Dr. Kane has taken us all this time. I'm going to continue in trust in the Lord first, and then second, Dr. Kane and Dr. Box and what they've been saying. They brought us through so far, and especially here in Marion County. I'm going to continue to trust Dr. Kane on where she's brought us to. So thank you so much for your leadership and guidance on this. And if we can support this tonight, I think she'll continue to bring us a little bit further until we can meet that herd immunity. I think we can meet it here in Indiana. We can get the resistance on some of those who, education is the key. We can continue to educate those who can get the vaccine and need a little bit more education on those, and make it more accessible. I think it's not as accessible still in some of the communities because of lack of transportation. Coupling transportation education, I think we can reach that herd immunity. So counselors, I think we should support this. Thank you so much, Dr. Kane.
Thank you so much, Councilor Jackson. I'm a very optimistic person. So I have to say we can reach that goal if we get full community support. We can reach that goal if we get full community support. One entity, the health department can't do it by itself. City council can't do it by itself. It requires all of us to be motivated to try to reach that goal and to try to put out community outreach and education. So we're hoping from the city of Indianapolis, Mayor Hotsett, myself, and other organizations have put out a $1 million mini grant outreach proposal to try to address vaccine hesitancy, trying to address how do we improve access issues. Where do people know how to get registered, especially if they don't have internet or computer access? So we're trying to put out different strategies out there in order to try to really get that education out there for people to be vaccinated.
President Osley.
Excellent.
President
Yes,
Osley.
Councilor Murray. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree. I think that, follow the science says a lot here. What does the science say that is so different from when we cross the Marion County border into one of our donut counties that they don't have the same restrictions? I think blanket statements are pretty hard to make, no matter whether it's public safety with violent crime or public safety with, this virus. I think it's hard for us to say that Marion County as a whole should be still under the same lockdowns or restrictions, rather than have individual businesses and entities make their own restrictions. I think there's plenty of responsible business owners out there. And Virginia, Dr. Kane, I still encourage you that if there are not business owners that are following the guidelines, and even if they were to be loosened up and the restrictions be loosened, I think we need to start looking at doing that. I mean, it's time to start catching up with the rest of the donut counties and the rest of the state, and soon to be the rest of the country.
Thank you for that comment, Councilor Murray. But I will emphasize one thing that makes us different. One, I really do believe, because of the size of our population, I also believe because of the population density related to us, that we are more vulnerable to being super spreaders than say our smaller counties. And of the groups, when we look at our cases or where we're seeing our cases occur, 18 to 24-year-olds, and even in the 20 to 39-year-olds, if you just take an example of looking at the amount of colleges that we have here with that age group, we are greater by far significant numbers compared to any of the surrounding counties if you look at the number of undergraduate students that we have. So we try to look at all of the complexity of our factors in terms of the cases. So I do think that we are different and we have to address our challenges a little bit differently than, say, our donut surrounding counties.
Thank you, Dr. Kane. Thank you, Mr. President, for allowing me to ask that question. I appreciate your response to that, Dr. Kane. And, you know, unfortunately, I guess I look at it as kind of like I can walk out of my front door right now and within 15 minutes be in Johnson County. I can be sitting right next to somebody in a full business, come right back to Marion County, and it'd be no different than if I was to sit in a restaurant in Marion County at full capacity right next to somebody. But I get it. You know, I appreciate your response. And Mr. President, I will yield back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor. Additional comments from councilors.
Councilor Osley, or President Osley.
Councilor Evans.
Thank you, sir. I just want to make sure that my remarks were clear with some of the comments that were made. My questioning and line here was directed at what does it look like once everyone has had the ability to get the vaccine? That includes kids, college kids, people who are sick. So I just want to make sure that was clear. Wasn't insinuating right now, but there's going to come a time when everyone will have had ample opportunity who wants the vaccine to get it. And so that's where that line of questioning was coming, and I appreciate Dr. Kane's answers to that and her effort. Thank you.
Very good. All right. I don't think I see any more hands up. I will ask Madam Clerk to do a roll call on proposal number 170. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Adamson.
Councilor Adamson, aye, and I would like to be added as a co-sponsor to this. I didn't know if there was anybody else willing to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Ane.
Councilor Ane, nay.
Councilor Bain.
Councilor Bain, nay.
Councilor Barth.
Barth, aye.
You, Councilor Boots.
Boots, aye, and I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor as well. Thank you.
You, Councilor Brown.
Brown, aye.
Councilor Carlino.
Councilor Carlino, aye.
Councilor Dilk.
Councilor Dilk, nay.
Councilor Ethan Evans.
Councilor Ethan Evans, aye.
Councilor Jared Evans.
Councilor Jared Evans, aye.
Councilor Graves.
Councilor Graves, aye.
Councilor Gray.
Councilor Gray, aye.
Councilor Hart.
Councilor Hart, nay.
Councilor Jackson. Councilor Jackson. Councilor Jones.
I'm sorry. Councilor Jackson, aye. And I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor, please.
Thank you. Councilor Jones.
Councilor Jones, aye.
Councilor Larison.
Councilor Larison, aye.
Councilor Lewis.
Aye.
Councilor Mascari.
Councilor Mascari, for all the people who lost their life to the coronavirus.
Sorry, Councilor Mascara, I didn't hear your vote.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilor McCormick?
Hi, Councilor McCormick, aye, and you can please add me as a co-sponsor.
Councilor Mowry?
Councilor Mowry, nay.
Councilor Oliver? Councilor Oliver? Councilor Osley?
Counselor Osley, aye.
Councilor Potts?
Councilor Potts, aye.
Councilor Ray?
Counselor Ray, aye.
Councilor Robinson?
Robinson, aye.
Councilor Oliver? Mr. President, the vote is 19 yay, 5 nay.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. The next item on our agenda is proposal number 133, referred to Administration and Finance Committee. Chairman Mascari.
Thank you, Mr. President. Proposal 133 was heard Tuesday, April 13th. It amends the digest for Chapter 135 and Article 7, Division 4 of the Code regarding the Capital Asset Development Fund. Passed out of committee 12-0. So moved.
Second, Barth.
Very good, thank you. The motion's been properly moved and seconded. Are there comments from councilors? All right, seeing none. Madam Clerk, would you do roll call, please?
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Adamson?
Councilor Adamson, aye.
Councilor Ane? Councilor Ane?
Councilor Ane, aye. I'm having audio issues.
Thank you. Councilor Bain?
Councilor Bain, aye.
Councilor Ane, aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilors Ane and Bain. Councilor Barth?
Barth, aye.
Councilor Boots?
Boots, aye.
Councilor Brown?
Councilor Brown, aye.
Councilor Carlino?
Councilor Carlino, aye.
Councilor Dilk?
Councilor Dilk, aye.
Councilor Ethan Evans?
Councilor Ethan Evans, aye.
Councilor Jared Evans?
Councilor Jared Evans, aye.
Councilor Graves?
Councilor Graves, aye. Madam Clerk, I was bumped out, so I'm listed now as an attendee, just for the record.
Thank you. Councilor Gray?
Councilor Gray, aye.
Councilor Hart?
Councilor Hart, aye.
Councilor Jackson?
Councilor Jackson, aye.
Councilor Jones?
Councilor Jones, aye.
Councilor Larison?
Councilor Larison, aye.
Councilor Lewis?
Aye.
Councilor Mascari?
Councilor Mascari, aye.
Councilor McCormick?
McCormick, aye.
Councilor Councilor Mowry?
Councilor Mowry, aye.
Thank you. Councilor Oliver? Councilor Osley?
Councilor Osley, aye.
Councilor Potts?
Councilor Potts, aye.
Councilor Ray?
Counselor Ray, aye.
Councilor Robinson?
Counselor Robinson, aye.
Councilor Oliver? Mr. President? Sorry about that, Mr. President. The vote is 24-0.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. The next item on our agenda is proposal number 135, referred to Rules Committee, and I will ask Councilor Brown to read the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Rules and Public Policy Committee of the City County Council met Tuesday, April 20th, 2021 via electronic communication. Chair Vop Osley called the meeting to order, and Councilors Boots, Brown, Dilk, Gray, Hart, Jackson, Lewis, Maury, and Robinson were available. Were on. Members were on, along with Councilor Barth as a guest. We heard proposal number 135, 2021, which amends the code to expand non-smoking areas within the consolidated city to include public parks owned or leased by the city or county. Chair Osley introduced Councilor John Barth to present as a sponsor of this proposal. Councilor Barth stated that this proposal would ban smoking, including e-cigarettes, in all 212 Indy parks except for golf courses and any property under a lease greater than 5 years. Councilor Barth stated that the penalty for first violation of this ban in a calendar year is a $100 payable ticket, and the second and subsequent violations in a calendar year is a court ticket with a minimum of a $200 fine and no more than $7,500 a year, and no more than $7,500 in a year. These violations will be issued by park rangers or the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department. Councilor Brown moves, seconded by Councilor Boots, to send proposal 135, 2021 to the full council with a due pass recommendation. The motion was carried by a vote of 6-4, with Councilors Dilk, Gray, Hart, and Maury casting the negative votes. I so move.
Barth, second.
Second.
All right, the motion is properly moved and seconded. Are there comments from councilors? Chairman Mascari.
Thank you. After hearing from the Friends of Garfield Park, they do support this. My only question is, how are we going to enforce this? We have 60 parks, some of them with 1,500 acres. Is there any way of enforcing this at all? But I will support this. That's my question.
Very good. Councilor Barth.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yep, this is a big discussion in committee, so let me address it. One of the points that's important to note is that here in Indianapolis, we are far, far behind the curve on this particular issue. Over 900 cities have already passed smoke-free policies for their parks. As I noted in committee, Boston, Seattle, and Philadelphia are among them. And not only that, we're not even forward thinking when it comes to central Indiana. Multiple cities in central Indiana also have bans on public smoking, smoking in public parks. And what has been found across the board, across the country, is the enforcement is really signage. Signage and communication that's done effectively by community leaders and parks officials. This is a societal expectation that comes into focus when the signs are posted, and it becomes the expectation, especially that you're not going to have smoking around children. Let me give you a good example. I told this story anyway. So the point is, there's no need really for enforcement along the lines of IMPD, et cetera, et cetera. This becomes signage and effective communication. And I'll add this one quick story is when I was in the Tarkington Park here in District 7 at the opening of Tease Me recently, I was walking through the park with the Catching Sisters at different points. And at one point we walked through an area where there's multiple small basketball courts, and there was a young mother with her 2 toddlers, and they were playing basketball and just having a good time. But right next to them was a lot of young adults who were all smoking, and the smoke was wafting over to this young mother and her children. And so I stopped and observed the scene and thought about it and said, well, this is my district, maybe I should do something. Before I could even think twice, this young mother had walked over and took matters into her own hands and asked these young adults not to be smoking near her children, that it was affecting their health. And they walked off at her request. And so that's precisely what should happen. And the thing that's an issue there, however, is that in that situation, the city of Indianapolis did not have the back of that young mother. And the problem with that is that we know, as the state of Indiana already puts on its website, that secondhand smoke contains more than 4,000 substances, including 200 known poisons and 43 cancer-causing agents. The U.S. Surgeon General has reporting there's no risk-free level of secondhand smoke, and the knowledge of secondhand smoke being dangerous to every other human, much less children and families, is common among everyone. So the point here is this. When it comes to enforcement, the real issue here is effective signage effective communication, and effective societal expectations. So thank you for the question, Chairman Muscari. I appreciate it.
Very good. Councilor Murray.
Thank you, Mr. President. And for Chairman Muscari, I think you said there were 60 plus parks. There's I only remember this from being on the committee, there are over 200 parks and less than 15 park rangers to enforce this. Now, I will not sit here and say that I think this is a bad idea. I think this is a good idea. I think we're moving in the right direction. However, I think this does, as I believe it was Councilor Gray who said in committee, that this is, it's important to have continued conversation on this with all districts, with all Marion County, not just one district and a couple neighborhood groups. I think we've kind of given time for people to get together and try to talk about this, but I think we could still give them more time. And further, I think the signs are a great idea, but my only fear with the signs is the inherent risk with approaching somebody at a park that you don't know and asking them to do something they may not want to do. And that could, just because the sign's there, that person may think that this is okay for me to say this. And, I would hate to see something bad happen as well, but not that would, but I'm just saying, I would hope that doesn't become in a situation where someone thought that because they saw the sign, they can then go say something, and then that person they say it to is apparently the wrong person to say it to, because I think that same situation has played out all too often, even this year in Marion County, where it's been saying something to the wrong person and they take it the wrong way, and it has an unfortunate outcome. Again, I still support I still think as a whole this proposal is a good idea. However, I do think that this could have used a lot more public input across the board. And here's the thing, is that I think even when we go to the public input across the board, we're going to hear the same notion that they agree with Councilor Barth. I think that he's doing a great thing here, but it's just the fact that it'd be a great opportunity for to have more public input and have people actually give their thoughts on this. But I think this is a good idea and a step forward for us, but I worry about some of the lack of input from our constituencies.
Very good. Councilor Boots.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just briefly, any anti-smoking measure is a no-brainer, in my opinion, and the public that wishes to discuss this can, at any time, bring their own proposal to say, I want to smoke and I want to kill myself, endanger the health of others. They are free to do that, and I welcome them to do that. I encourage everybody to vote for this tonight and pass it and put this issue to rest. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Very good. Chairman Gray.
I will be voting against this tonight, as I did in committee. Like I said before, if we had to put this in no smoking in the playground area or something like that, that would have been different. But we got open drinking in the parks. We got open guns in the park. All these things kill people as well. And I think that smokers are taxpayers just like non-smokers. And all the parks are supported by tax dollars. So I think that a person who wants to walk through the park and have an afternoon smoke, that should be his privilege. Just like everyone that don't want to smoke, don't smoke. So I will be voting no for this proposal.
Thank you, Chairman. Additional comments. Councilor Hart.
Thank you, Mr. President. And just some of the things to bring back up from committee that we discussed in terms of enforcement, and this is a pretty. I keep hearing the same example over and over when it comes to this, and it's one anecdotal experience. I mean, I'm sure somebody else has been disturbed by somebody else's smoke in the history of our parks in Indianapolis, but I just have to really lean on the enforcement side of this. I mean, we have a lot more important things for our police officers to be worrying about right now in the city of Indianapolis than enforcing anything on anybody who's smoking in a park. I just don't see this logically even playing out. Furthermore, when it comes to signs, we have speed signs, speed limit signs, but people still speed. So, I mean, if signs were so effective, we would never have to write a ticket again, but that's not the case. I mean, if you want to smoke, people are going to ignore these laws. They're going to do what they want to do, and nobody's going to be there to stop them. So, I mean, it's just a nonsense law that, I mean, good in intent, but fails in practicality. So that's just where I'm at on it.
Thank you, Councilor. Additional comments from members of the council? Chairwoman Jackson.
As a person personally who's allergic to cigarette smoke, I found out when I had to be rushed to the hospital, I broke out in wept, didn't know it. But two, you know, people that are exposed to it, we don't get the option. If we walk past a person, they have a filter. So they're smoking through a filter. If we walk past them, they're smoking, we inhale directly. That's the difference. So I want to put that out there too. There is a difference in between the two. And if a child or, you know, a person on an oxygen machine or a person that's sick or whatever that's in the park and they're playing, there is a difference from being out in the park where families are, where people are exposed to cigarette smoke. And there is a difference that I just personally feel there is a difference. So I just want to make my own personal statement and comment. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilor Barth.
Thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity to speak again. I'll just wrap up my final comments just by saying, and I appreciate Councilor Jackson's comments. I think those are spot on. I'm hopeful that we'll get the support of the council tonight. I hope everyone joins the list of sponsors, list of supporters. I want to read through some of them. The American Lung Association in Indiana, the YMCA of Greater Indianapolis, the Latino Health Organization, the Indiana Latino Institute, Health by Design, and the Indiana Public Health Association have all reached out and indicated their support, and I hope we can get the support of the full council tonight.
Right, very good. Thank you so much. If there are no additional comments from councilors, I will ask Madam Clerk to do a roll call, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Adamson.
Councilor Adamson, aye.
Councilor Ane.
Councilor Ane, nay.
Councilor Bain.
Councilor Bain, nay.
Councilor Barth.
Barth, aye.
Councilor Boots.
Boots, aye.
Councilor Brown.
Brown, aye.
Councilor Carlino.
Councilor Carlino, aye.
Councilor Dilk.
Councilor Dilk, nay.
Councilor Ethan Evans.
Councilor Ethan Evans, aye.
Councilor Jared Evans.
Councilor Jared Evans, aye.
Councilor Graves.
Councilor Graves, aye.
Councilor Gray.
No.
Councilor Hart.
Councilor Hart, nay.
Councilor Jackson.
Mr. Jackson, aye.
Councilor Jones.
Councilor Jones, aye.
Councilor Larison.
Councilor Larison, aye.
Councilor Lewis.
Lewis, aye.
Councilor Mascari.
Mascari, aye.
Councilor McCormick.
McCormick, aye.
Councilor Mowry.
Councilor Mowry, nay.
Councilor Oliver. Councilor Osley.
Councilor Osley, aye.
Councilor Potts.
Councilor Potts, aye.
Councilor Ray.
Councilor Ray, aye.
Councilor Robinson.
Councilor Robinson, aye.
Mr. President, we have 18 yay, 6 nay.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. There is no business under special service district councils. There is no business under new business. So the next item on our agenda is announcements and adjournment. The docketed agenda for this meeting of council having been completed, the chair will now entertain motions for adjournment.
Mr. President.
Chair recognizes Councilor Mowry.
Mr. President, I have been asked to offer the following motion for adjournment by all councilors in memory of Samaria Blackwell, Harley Smith, Matt Alexander, Armajit Sekhorn, Jasvinder Kaur, Armajit Kaur Johal, Jasvinder Singh, John Steve Weiser. By Councilor Adamson, in memory of Kelly Winsing. By Councilor Lewis, in memory of Dr. Frank Lloyd and Nancy Mallon. By Councilors Brown and Ray, in memory of Derek Ransom. By Councilor Hart, in memory of Gerald Jerome Jerry Pappenmeyer. By Councilor Osley, in memory of John Lewis. By Councilor Larison, in memory of Dustin Boyer. By Councilor Renee, in memory of Antonio Tony Cinto. Mr. President, I would like to move the adjournment of this meeting of the Indianapolis City County Council in recognition of and respect for the life and contributions of those persons I have specifically named. I respectfully ask the support of fellow councilors. I further request the motion be made part of the permanent records of this body and that a letter bearing the council seal and the signature of the president be sent to the family of each person advising of this action.
Thank you, Councilor Mowry. Hearing no objections, the motion is received and the request is so ordered. Hearing no further motions, we're adjourned. Thank you, councilors.